Hey everyone, and welcome back. If you've ever felt like your brain's running a million miles an hour, but you can't quite seem to, focus that energy where you need it, then you're in the right place. Today's deep dive is all about ADHD, and we're looking at Jessica McCabe's How to ADHD to help us unpack this often misunderstood topic.
Yeah, and the great thing about McCabe's book is she brings her own experiences to the table. Like, she's been there. Messy rooms, missed appointments, that constant inner struggle to just focus that can leave you feeling, frankly, kind of crazy.
It's so relatable for anyone who's ever felt that disconnect between what your brain should be doing and what it actually does, right?
Yeah.
But this deep dive isn't about judging, it's about understanding.
Exactly. And McCabe really stresses that a lot of the information out there about ADHD is, outdated. We're not talking about kids just bouncing off the walls here. This is about brains that are literally wired differently. So, no, not everyone is a little ADHD, and it's definitely not a matter of willpower.
So let's break this down a bit. If it's not just hyperactivity, what does it actually mean to have an ADHD brain?
Well, ADHD can actually present in different ways. And McCabe talks about three main presentations: primarily inattentive, primarily hyperactive impulsive,
Yeah.
and then there's combined type. And here's the thing, these presentations, they can actually evolve over time. What works for one person might not work for someone else.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation at all.
No, not at all. And McCabe actually has this great anecdote in the book about how she aced a statistics class in college. She was crushing it because she had the right support system in place. But then, life happened, and she actually forgot to re-register for the next semester and lost all that progress.
Wait, she aced statistics but forgot to register? That's almost unbelievable.
It does, doesn't it? But that's the thing about ADHD. It often impacts what's called executive function. That's your brain's ability to plan, organize, manage time. McCabe also mentions how, even though she did well on her college entrance exams, she never really had a solid plan for course requirements and ended up taking a bunch of unnecessary classes. This even happened after her counselor had reassured her about transferring to a 4-year university. Turns out she'd actually missed a key step in the process.
Wow, that's got to be so frustrating. Having the ability, but then hitting a wall because these executive function challenges, it really highlights how it's not about intelligence, it's about how your brain is wired, right?
Absolutely. Understanding these different ADHD presentations is crucial, not to label anyone, but to figure out what kind of support someone needs to actually thrive.
So we've talked about the different ways ADHD can present, but knowing is only half the battle, right? What does McCabe actually suggest we do with this understanding?
Right, so she talks about building an ADHD toolbox. Basically, practical strategies you can use to work with your brain instead of, constantly feeling like you're fighting against it.
Okay, I love that. An ADHD toolbox. What kind of tools are we talking about?
She covers a lot, but let's dive into a few that really stood out, especially thinking about your deep dive goals. First up, and this might sound a little surprising, sleep. McCabe is a big believer that for ADHD brains especially, sleep is not a luxury, it's essential.
See, this is where I struggle. There's always so much to do that sleep feels like the first thing to go.
McCabe totally gets that. She even describes sleep as having a chaotic neutral alignment. It just does not care about your deadlines or your to-do list, right? But she's really adamant that getting enough sleep is crucial. It impacts your focus, your mood, even your overall well-being. She talks about how she struggled with this herself for years.
Okay, so what's the solution? What does she recommend?
Some of them are pretty simple things, but they can make a big difference, like associating your bed with sleep only, winding down effectively before bed, and even figuring out if you're a night owl or a morning person, your chronotype. She even suggests ditching the alarm clock for a bit to, really figure out your natural sleep rhythm.
Oh, ditching the alarm clock, that's kind of revolutionary. Okay, what else is in this toolbox?
Let's talk about time blindness. That feeling that time is just this slippery, abstract concept that you can never quite grasp.
Oh, tell me about it. My internal clock is basically a sundial in a hurricane.
You're definitely not alone. McCabe actually mentions that a staggering 98% of people with ADHD struggle with time management compared to, get this, just 8% of the general population.
98%. Okay, wow, that really puts it in perspective.
It's because, and this is really interesting, our brains have a harder time with something called time-based perspective memory, which is basically remembering to do something in the future.
Okay, yeah, that's scarily accurate to my life.
So McCabe suggests trying to make time more tangible, visual timers, breaking down tasks, even scheduling things twice, like once in your calendar and then again with a separate reminder.
Double booking myself, but on purpose?
Oh.
Okay, that's a new one.
It really does help. And she also talks about this idea of differentiating between want to and willing to commitments. Like, sometimes we say yes to things out of obligation, even when we know we really don't have the time or energy.
Ugh, yes, the guilt is real.
Right. But just being honest with yourself and with others about what you're truly willing to commit to can help prevent burnout.
That's huge. Okay, so we've got sleep, we've got time management. What about motivation? That's a big one for me.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And McCabe actually tackles this misconception that ADHD is about laziness. It's not. It's more that our brains are wired to prioritize, like, immediate rewards over long-term goals.
So it's like my brain's stuck in instant gratification mode.
Exactly. And that's why typical reward systems, they often kind of backfire for us. McCabe highlights this concept of behavioral activation, which is basically the idea that for ADHD brains, action often comes before motivation.
So don't wait for the inspiration, just start doing.
Basically, she actually uses this example of waiting for the motivation to, like, memorize lines as an actor, which, rarely worked. Procrastination is real, but so are the strategies to overcome it. Breaking things down, timers, accountability partners, adding a little fun into the mix, these can all be super helpful.
Okay, that's making me feel slightly more capable of tackling my to-do list.
And that's the point, right? This isn't about, like, fixing you. It's about finding what actually works with how your brain is wired.
Absolutely. And we've covered a lot: sleep, time, motivation. But there's one more area I'm curious about, especially in the context of this book: relationships. Like, that's where I feel like my ADHD shows up in ways I don't always understand. Like, how do you explain to someone that you want to be on time, that you want to remember their birthday, but your brain, it's like it has other plans?
It is tough. And McCabe actually talks about this thing called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD, which is this heightened sensitivity to rejection that's really common with ADHD, where even a perceived slight can feel incredibly painful.
And then that can lead to, like, avoiding situations, overthinking interactions, which, it just makes everything so much harder.
Exactly. McCabe also points out that, difficulty with empathy can sometimes cause friction in relationships, even though, and this is important, people with ADHD are often highly sensitive.
It's like, I do care, I am listening, but sometimes it's like my brain just misses those social cues.
Yes. And she really gets that. And that's why she emphasizes, like, setting realistic expectations, both for yourself and being really clear in communicating those expectations to others. And then also, I love this, she talks about finding your people. Like, find the people who understand, who accept you for who you are.
Finding your tribe. Those who get that your brain might be wired a little differently, but your heart's in the right place.
Absolutely. And she takes this a step further, right? She reminds us that ADHD doesn't exist in a vacuum. She talks about this concept of ADHD and like acknowledging that ADHD often comes with other challenges too, like anxiety, depression, learning disabilities.
Yeah, it's complex. And so for our listener out there, like, figuring out your ADHD also means taking those other aspects of your experience into account.
Right, it's all connected. But here's the good news, and I think McCabe's book does a great job of highlighting this. None of this means that you're broken or that you're destined to struggle forever.
It's about understanding your brain, finding the right tools for you, and building a life that works.
Exactly. There's no magic cure for ADHD, but there are strategies, there's support, and there's a whole community out there who understands.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, remember, you're not alone. Take what resonates with you from McCabe's insights, check out the book, and most importantly, be kind to yourself throughout this process.
It's